What's up people, this is Vishal and in today's video I'm going to talk about the heart of JavaScript, which is event loop. So let's go. So let's first look at some basic statements about JavaScript. So JavaScript is an interpreted language and JavaScript is a synchronous language, right? So I'm saying that JavaScript is synchronous, but we all know that on each website you visit, you see that there are asynchronous operations happening all across the website, right? But by the nature of JavaScript as a language, JavaScript is a synchronous language. So and this is a very important question in interviews as well, that though JavaScript is synchronous, how does it represent the nature of an asynchronous language? So for that, the one word answer is event loop. JavaScript doesn't have threads. There is no multi-thread programming going on in JavaScript, but there is a concept of event loop which will present the nature of synchronicity in JavaScript. So let's take a look at this basic code that I've written over here and try to understand what event loop is. So if you look at this basic code, I'm just declaring a variable I and looping over I equal to 0, I less than 5, and doing these operations inside my loop, and that's all that this function is doing. So the people who want to guess the answer for this particular function's output, you can pause the video right here and let's try to execute the code and see what output this function gives. And remember, this kind of questions can be asked in interviews, and basically the idea in that interview question would be to understand whether you know about event loop or not. Okay, so let's try to execute the code and see what's happening in the output. Okay, so once I execute the code, you will see that since I told you that JavaScript is an interpreted language, so each statement is getting executed one by one. So first the test function got executed, the interpretation started from here, a function test was declared, then after that when we call that function, the interpretation starts from here. So we declared a variable I, and then we did I equal to 0, then we checked for I less than 5, and then the next statement was console.log of hello, which got printed. That is cool. Now the next statement is the set timeout of 1 second. This is where the event loop will be kicking in, and you will notice that in this output that we had hello printed over here, and your code didn't wait for set timeout to complete. It proceeded forward and printed hi there, and then it continued for each loop item. It went on printing hello and hi there for 5 times, and at the end the set timeout is now printing 5 times. Instead of printing 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, it printed 5 times. Now to understand why this happened, let's move on to a website called latentflip.com. I'll leave the link in the description for you to come here and try it out, and thanks to the developer for this, Philip Roberts, to develop this amazing tool for understanding the event loop. Alright, so I've copy pasted my code into this editor. So whenever we talk about event loop, you have to imagine this diagram and just understand that there is a call stack, there is a web APIs, and there is a callback queue. So when the interpretation of my code starts, it sees that there is a test function that I'm calling. So test function goes into the call stack, and then the test function starts executing. It sees that there is a let I, then I equal to 0 goes into the call stack, then I equal to 0 has been initialized, then it is popped out of the stack, then I less than 5 goes into the call stack, I less than 5 has been evaluated, and then it gets popped out, and then based on the for loop, since all the conditions are satisfying, the console log hello will be moved into the call stack. It gets executed, and hence we see hello being printed. Now when it comes to set timeout, now set timeout is a web API. It is not a part of JavaScript, right? So JavaScript internally doesn't have set timeout function. So set timeout is something which is provided by the web API. Similarly, just like set timeout, we have set interval, you can also call fetch. So fetch, set timeout, and all these functions are the part of web APIs. They are not internal to JavaScript. Hence, when JavaScript reaches this this statement, it sees that okay, I don't know what to do with this, so it will just go into the call stack, JavaScript will see, okay, I don't know what to do with this, so JavaScript is going to forward that into the web APIs area. Okay, so this entire set timeout statement goes into the web API area and waits for the timeout to complete. So once the timeout is complete in the web APIs area, the callback function is then moved into the callback queue. Okay, so the job of event loop over here is to just keep checking whether the call stack is empty or not. If the call stack is empty, that time this event loop will check, do I have any callback functions to execute or not. If it has the callback functions to execute, that time it is going to dequeue each of these callback functions and then move them into the call stack, and then JavaScript will continue executing those callback functions. Okay, so this is the entire explanation about the about the event loop. And one more thing that I forgot to show. So right now I've given 1000 millisecond timeout. What if I give a 0 millisecond timeout? The output of this code is still going to be the same. Okay, so very important point, just understand why it is still going to be the same. Though there is a timeout of only there's a no timeout right now, there is 0 millisecond timeout, but even if there is a 0 millisecond timeout, JavaScript will see that there is a set timeout and it doesn't know what to do with it, so it will just move it to the web APIs, and the job of web APIs is just execute the timer, whatever the callback function is, move it to the callback queue, right? And like I told earlier, so if the event loop will only move these callback functions into the call stack if the call stack is empty. Now, but in this case, if the timeout is 0, the call stack is not empty because code is already executing for I less than 1, I less than 2, I less than 3, and so on. So call stack is never empty. Hence, the event loop will not get a chance to forward these callback statements into the call stack, and hence the output is still going to be the same. Okay, so let's run this code and let's see this website in function, and whatever I've talked so far, you will see it happening on this side of the screen. So I click on save and run, test goes into the call stack, I less than 5, and you'll see. So set timeout is now moved into the web APIs, and the callback, since that call stack is not empty, callback is waiting in the callback queue. Okay, so I equal to whatever the console log I is waiting in the callback queue. Okay, so let's wait for this to completely execute. So we will now have 5 callbacks into our callback queue. Now the function is executed, right? So this condition fails, the code has been executed. Now the call stack is empty. Now event loop is going to do its magic, so it will execute the anonymous functions. Okay, so it will dequeue one item and it will go on executing. Okay, so this is not getting cleared out because of maybe some bug on the website, but I hope you get the idea why how this entire execution worked. So the reason why this 5 is printed 5 times instead of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is because by the time these callback functions are executed, the code has already completed, like the code has already completed its execution, and the leaving value of I after the loop execution is 5. And since this is an inner function, that will always have the scope of the outer function, right? If you have not seen my video on closures, you can click on the suggestion box and watch that to understand why this inner function will have the scope of the outer function. But moving on, so we know that the inner function is going to have the scope of the outer function even though the code has completed its execution. So by the time these callback functions execute, the I value after the loop execution is 5. And hence the 5 times whatever the 5 callback functions that were there in the callback queue, they execute, and 5 is printed 5 times onto the console. Alright, so that is everything about the event loop, and this is a very, very important concept. And personally, during when I'm taking interviews, I always ask these questions about the event loop, because this gives me the idea how properly the person knows about JavaScript. So that's all for this one, guys. I hope you understood the concept of event loop properly, and like and share this video and subscribe to my channel for more videos on JavaScript and web development in the future. So see you in the next one. Bye.